I only work where I have fun at the topic that I work on. If there's no fun, I leave it.
I also believe value for self. Personally, I get the biggest fulfillment not when I'm being entertained or where I'm consuming, but when I'm creating.
Work is not always a birthday party.
Ultimately, every person in a leadership position wants to deliver results.
I'm a new work enthusiast. I think if you have one of these role models, the company or parts of the company can change, and then you have that wave idea of more following that.
And I think there's nothing wrong with expert leaders. It's great if a leader has expertise, but it's not sufficient. You need more than that to succeed as a leader.
If you develop them as a corporate influencer, it's always a buzzword, it's also a buzzword, but I think if we use that for putting him in front of that process as the role model, you have one face for that.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Agile Insights Conversation. Today, I'm being joined by Marc Eichborn. Marc is a former client of ours and right now works as a consultant himself. I will give him some proper time to introduce himself. Today's session is going to be about how we change or implement new work and whatever that is into older or more established organizations. Marc has some real experience around that, working on this in several organizations, and he will talk about it. And we'll explore the topics of new work, the biggest challenges, and of course, also what has worked for him in this context. But before we go in there, Marc, welcome to the show. And I'll leave the stage to you for a proper introduction of yourself.
Sohrab, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you and to the audience today. Yeah, me. It's Marc, and I choose the three hashtags for describing me a bit. Starting with the most private hashtag is I'm a cycling enthusiast. I own more than 9 bikes, and the right count of bikes is N+1. And if you look at that N is the actual amount of bikes. The funny fact is that my wife always says, no problem with the bikes, because it's not a Porsche, so I don't collect Porsches. That's much more expensive to have. These bikes follow me in my story, in my business context around, because all these are not multi-purpose vehicles. They are all built for a very special purpose. For example, folding bike for traveling to and from rail stations, cargo bikes for carrying things. And so every bike has a special purpose. And I think in transformation, for example, not every tool fits to every company. And this is so part of the storyline I always have. A second hashtag is I'm a new work enthusiast. And the problem of the word or the claim new work is that we in Germany have a very special look on that claim. If you look at the history, it's created by Frithjof Bergmann, a guy who designed that part of new work in one of the biggest crises of the steel industry in America in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And it's more like a utopia of how work will develop itself to self-employment and being a worker in a company and self-manufacturing and those things around. It's more like a theory and not that what we in Germany call new work as a mostly buzzword in my personal opinion, and put everything like a kicker, like fruits, like free coffee. This is not new work in core. This is part of changing of work and future of work, but not the core of new work. Mm-hmm. And I like to transform. This is one of the other key things I'll do. I like to transform companies or accompany companies while they are transforming digital transforming of the business model and these things. So I have these three: cycle enthusiast, new work enthusiast, and the transformation, a company a thing. Yeah, I'm located in Bonn. I'm a company guy in my former life. As you said, or as you mentioned, I started to build my own consulting business with these topics. And one of the core assets is that I focus on future of work and the implementation in the company, in the corporate. And this is, I think, a part that we will touch in the ongoing discussion. So these are some of the parts. I'm a father of two. One is left house for studying, and I do a lot of marathon running, climbing, and these things.
Okay, I didn't know the cycling enthusiast part.
Yeah,
that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So the last time you and I spoke, this was like shortly before you went on a longer trip to the Himalayas, right?
Yes.
So I knew that you were into mountaineering, but I had no idea that you collect bikes.
And 10 different bikes, 10 different bikes, all collected and fine picked from the parts of what can you do on a bike or with a bike.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that or how you connected them, right? You mentioned all of them are single-purpose vehicles, not multi-purpose. Yeah. And it's similar with various tools and techniques. Yeah. They don't fit in every context, right? Yeah. They fit certain contexts, and we have to carefully choose the tools that we use. I always use the analogy of a surgeon who not only has a 10 blade to cut open a patient, but they also need something to stitch the patient up and all of that.
Absolutely.
So I definitely get that. So, Marc, you also mentioned that you used to be like a big company guy. You worked for a fairly large and traditional insurance company. That's, I think, the first time we got in touch. And then you worked
two companies.
Two large. And you also worked with one of Germany's biggest IT providers for especially the public or statutory health insurances, right? And I would assume that both of those organizations, being fairly old and to some extent regulated or in like as a government owned to some extent, that they were fairly traditional in how they are set up, the structures that they have, the level of autonomy that they provide to people, and all of that kind of stuff. And in both of those cases, you were key to the transformation towards whatever we call new work.
Yeah.
Now, before we go into the transformation piece, which is one of the things that you are enthusiastic about, I wanted to deep dive on the topic of new work itself. And you already started with a bit of the history that it goes back, especially in Germany, to the 1960s, 1970s. And that it's not about having foosball tables or kicker, as we say in German, or like ping pong tables in the office and free fruits and sometimes even free beer or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's about something else. What is that something else based on the research that you've done and what you've seen in many other organizations?
Yeah. If we put that claim new work besides, and I always talk about future of work in German, Zukunft der Arbeit. So that there's no mixed of this buzzword bingo we sometimes have. What is the core of new work, future of work, from my perspective? From my perspective, it's that the pandemic, and not only the pandemic, has changed or started the change of how we work together. The core asset of working together. Working together means I come to the office and work with the other guys in my team, in other teams, cross-functional together. These cross-functional working is in some of the companies very good implemented. In other companies, you have that silos. You have the things that this is my part of the game, and don't touch it. You are coming from the other silo, and we don't work together because afterwards I lost power. I lost a bit of responsibility for that because you came in like a hunter or something like that. And this change of working cross-functional and working together with the colleagues is the core of understanding how we work together in the future. Working together in that part of transformation is the room and the method of working. I always come from the room, from the physical part of it, and I try to translate it quite well from the German. The work doesn't have to fit in the room. The room has to fit around the work. So the room is one part of the method, and it has to give space to develop the work I have to do. For example, when you have to work on a concept very silent, post-pandemic, you stay at home, you shut all your doors and you work 2 hours on that concept or a whole day or whatever. If you work on, or you do it at the office in a room who's claimed silent room, and then there's no talk in the room. There's no telephoning. There's no giggling. There's quiet working. If there's one in, he can do what he wants. But if there are two in, they will work on a silent brain force or brain work that should not be disturbed. The second, for example, if I have just watching my email konto account, doing some stuff that is clearing the daily work, I can do it on an open space, and I got connected to the others who do the same or similar things, and I get, by the connection of they're doing a phone call, they're doing a video call, getting some informations and can spring into the discussion and have more connection with my team. This is like an open space era. And then you have conference areas, you have workshop areas, and every part of the day has its own place to work. Yeah, I can design my day or can schedule my day and say, okay, the whole day is scripting some brain work. I stay at home. But when I'm in the office and at our labor culture a workshop area, we designed it that everybody changes from meeting to meeting the place where the meeting happens, because the meeting has its own environment and chooses in his own environment. And that's the point why not the work puts into the room, but the room has to develop itself around the work.
That's a very interesting point that you mentioned. And I never looked at it that way. I never thought about it this way. But while you were speaking, I was like, so if you think about manufacturing, right? Be it automotive manufacturing, steel product, whatever, right? Of course, the room fits the work and not the other way around. So when we look at all of those things, we specifically design a manufacturing plant so that the work can be done in the most effective and most efficient way.
Yep.
But with offices, and I love that piece, with offices, we haven't done that. At least in most organizations, and not purposefully done that. Maybe sometimes they come in and say, let's make this office a bit nicer, and we need a bit more meeting rooms because now people are having their daily stand-ups and all of that. But not with the intention to make the room fit the work instead of otherwise. We just expect people to deal with whatever they have at hand and make the best out of it. So based on that, no, that's one dimension, let's say, of new work. Are there other dimensions, other principles that you would want to emphasize on before we go and look at how this was actually done?
Yeah, this is I call it a method bag where I put all the methods in, and the physical room is one of the dimension. The other dimension is losing power or giving the power to the right place in the company. We in Germany mostly, not everybody, but mostly, decided to bring sometimes, I think most of the times, the guy to be the head of a team, to be a head of a section, who has the best knowledge about a topic.
Yeah.
And we don't think we don't ask more in the past, but still we don't ask if he has any ability or power to lead the people, to be a real leader, to push the people to their positive limits and these things. We always look, yeah, he is the best guy in that topic, and he wants more money, to make it very simple. And the only plan we have is that he gets the team lead for 8 people or something like that. And then you can get more money because we have that structure of payroll. That's the only way. I think in new work, we have to change that very deeply and have to look who's the best leader, not the best guy on that topic, the best leader, and give them the opportunity to lead the team, to develop each part of the team, each guy, if each woman, each man, to its best abilities and its best fits in the team. And that means I have to lose power as the leader in being in all discussions about decisions of what's the next step on the topic, what's the next budget point, what is the next client we use. This is a bit more separated than in the past. And I don't think that's very implemented in traditional corporates. It's on the way, but it's a long way to go. And this is a main part of losing that power of guiding all people through the topic and leading the people as a leader. This is for me the second part. And that the leader has to learn it because they didn't learn it. We didn't teach them to be such a type of leader. We teach them, you are the best go-to guy for that topic, and so you will lead the team, and the team are in that topics very special, educated, and so that will fit. Yeah. It's for me, it's the second method. And then how can future of work implemented in the companies is that I will start with a story. I often hear from teams, we want to go to that labor culture workshop and change our doing in collaboration and these things. And the leader, the team lead says, okay, the team will go because they have the problem. So I start the discussion with the team lead. Maybe you are the problem. I'll do it in very short. Or the other way around, the team lead says, I want to go with the team, but not me, myself. The method is everybody from the team, including the leader, has to come to the labor culture workshop, because it only fits if everybody comes to that tool. This is the third part, and then you go through the team. You have a change pilot or some coaches in that 6 weeks program where you coach the team to new tools. For example, for a Kanban or for Scrum or Agile, you name it. It must fit to the team, and the team decides what's the team wants, and then the coaches, being part of the team and coaches them to new tools.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have now several tools that you mentioned.
Yep.
I want to, before we go back to the tools, I want to take a step back. And in your introduction, you talked about Fridtjof Bergmann and
Yep.
him being the person that basically coined the term new work, at least in the German speaking countries. I don't know whether you know it or not, but I'd like to explore this with you. What was the intention back then? What was the vision before thinking about tools? What was the vision behind
Yep.
new work? What problem did they want to solve? Towards which desire did they want to change
Yep.
workplaces?
In one of the biggest crises in the steel industry at the big lakes in America, half of the entire crew of the car manufacturer has to leave the company because it was a really big crisis. And Fridtjof Bergmann says there's enough work to do, not only in the company, but around. There are lots of roofs there are no gardens on. There are lots of teaching kids. There's lots of looking after kids because the other one has to work. And you name it. There's enough work. And so he divided it in three parts. The first part is I do paid work at the company, at the motor company, for example, or at retail or wherever you work. Second part is you do work for the society. You are paid by, you do work for the society and use the work of the society for yourself. They looking after your kids while you're working, you looking after their kids while they working, for example. A simple exchange, but not only direct exchange, exchange in every dimension is the third part. The second part, and the third part is doing self-manufacturing. He was the first, as far as I know, one of the first guys who said there will be self-printing, there will 3D self-printing, there will be self-gardening where you get your fruits and your other things from the garden. And these are the three parts. You have the paid part, you have the community part, and you have the self part, as I will name it. And so the motor Ford company, I think it was a Ford, decided not to leave all the or to push out all the workers, and their two workers were on one job, and they
Work sharing,
do it.
basically.
Yeah, they shared one job, and so they got half of the money. Yeah, but the final destination is that all three parts come to value and gave these things back. I have to buy in the social part and in the society part. I don't have to buy it because I give it to the society. This is the core idea coming from the crisis from the steel or motor crisis in the 70s.
So it was mainly
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, to some extent it did. So it was mainly about keeping people at work, one.
Exact.
Providing some kind of, for the lack of better words, providing some kind of purpose, right? Especially the societal part is that. And fostering autonomy, which is the self-manufacturing, self-sustaining, etc., where people become less and less dependent on others and more independent, which also means they take more responsibility for themselves. Now, when we look at this initial intention of new work, at least based on the work that Fridtjof Bergmann did, if I look at many organizations that are today claiming to create some kind of new workspace, I see you're laughing, so you know where I'm going with this, right? that doesn't have to do anything with that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's especially in Germany. It's the claim doesn't fit to what they do. They do future of work. They do a change of how the workforces work together, but they don't do new work. New work is a social utopia, something like a method or a theory that has to be implemented in a much bigger group than one corporate. And in the corporate, you can do things for the society, ESG, and all the things that put in that part of corporates. But I think the core of new work from Fritjof Bergmann is more a personal thing, purpose-driven, and one part is the being employed in a corporate or in a company.
Yeah, or making the amount of money that you need to lead the life that you want to live. Now, the reason I bring this up, and I'll hand over to you shortly, is a week ago, I think, I published an article about the difference between creation and consumption. Mm-hmm. And what I see a lot in many organizations is they are becoming more and more places where employees consume. Right? They consume the foosball table. They consume the free food. They consume maybe even the free alcohol, whatever is there, right? And they want to be entertained by the organization. Whereas creation, that's where value is created. Value for the customer, value for the business. And I also believe value for self, because only personally, I get the biggest fulfillment, not when I'm being entertained or where I'm consuming, but when I'm creating. And what I've heard from you, or maybe that's my interpretation with my own biases on that, is that this whole topic of new work was also mainly around creation, not so much about consumption, and providing people with the right environment, right, the room that fits their work, with the right environment so that they can create for the business where they're employed, create for society, and create for themselves. Does that interpretation go too far, or is it correct?
No, it's absolute. It's absolute correct. I don't think it's a generation question. I will put that in front because I'm a older guy, and I think I'm in mind young enough to go with that. And I see some of the really young guys who are around 25 or something like that wants to work only in the public services because there's a safe harbor of I get my money and I get my pension at the end of my work life.
Yeah.
This is not my thinking, and it's not a generation a task on a task on the age of the person. It's a mindset question. I think you don't go too far. I always use the claim. I only work where I have fun at the topic that I work on. If there's no fun, I leave it. But work is not always a birthday party. Work is also work. I have to do some things and not to consume the whole day. I have to do some things I don't want to do. But in the overall overview, it has to make my day so that I have fun going tomorrow to the same place or to the same company to work there. Yeah. So it's not a birthday party, but it has to, bring, myself a bit more forward, and I have fun with that. So I fully agree. Consumption is, a thing that comes more and more up in our workforces, but I don't think that's the right track. So we have to make clear, very clear, that there are other parts that they paid for.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm happy that I got this one. Now that we've talked about,
I'm happy that you are happy.
Now that we've talked about the characteristics of new work, right? The intention behind it. You also mentioned some of the tools from your method back, right? looking at the organizations that you have worked in, right?
Yeah.
Large organizations among them. What have been the biggest challenges towards implementing these elements of new work and getting the organization ready for it, to accept it and embark on this change journey?
Yeah. The most difficult thing is if you got the top management alignment to do so, then to get the connection to the teams, to give them the value or show them the value they get from the tools. I will describe it a bit more. We implemented a physical room with the silent area, with workshop area, with conference rooms, with a big kitchen where you can talk, where you can sit and eat together without a football table, without table tennis and these things. So to get the first team in to work there, for our program has 6 weeks, and I recommend 6 or more weeks for that program, to implement it in the core of the people, like habits. For getting a new habit, you always say 100 days, 12 weeks or something like that. In professional environment, we start with 6 weeks. The hardest thing is to get the first team and the second and the third. And when they are on their transition back to their area, when they are happy with their new tools they get and their work looks happier looking from the outside, from the neighbor team, then there's a part of
you create a pull.
Self-fulfilling pull that more teams say, okay, that team has a lot of more fun and get better key results as we do in our team. We have to go to that labor culture workshop with our team to be better. Not to be better in I'm better than you, better than in our team, not in the competitive way, more in the you get a better work habits.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest hurdle you have to cross. If you cross it, you don't have enough change pilots, you don't have enough spaces to get all the teams fast through these 6 weeks, because there are a lot of teams in the queue.
They want to volunteer. Now, you mentioned 2 things. One was about the teams, and we'll explore that a bit later. The first one that you mentioned was about top management alignment, right? And their commitment. You have been part of top management in the organizations that you worked in. How do we get this top management alignment? Because not everyone has the experience that these new ways of working, right, this building new culture and all of that will be beneficial. Within top management, people are scared about their own position because they're not comfortable with these new things and they don't know what value they will be adding in the future. You talked about fear earlier, right? This cross-domain collaboration becomes difficult if there is fear. And I've seen the same patterns within top management. You, as someone who has been there, part of top management, how do you get to this alignment?
Yeah, by talking. Talking about the positive things and talking about the negative things. And if we look at this very clear, it only works if one has the power to do so, or left his own comfort zone and decided to do so. I think it works with power. Easy. If the CEO says there's these, we try to use that methods and we try to implement them, nobody can overrule him. Not the best way, but a way to do it. Or you have the management team, for example, the top management team, or 2 or 3 in that team that decided we will do it because we see the positive things and not look at the negative things. And we try it. We can throw it away after 6 months, 18 months or something like that. It's a small invest. It's nearly nothing to invest. And you get the chance of getting better people. I think this claim of a CFO who says, we educate the people up and then they leave. And the CEO answered, what will happen if we don't educate them and they stay? This is the core thinking I put in that discussion with the leadership team, to try it, to give it a chance to try it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now we get the alignment, we get the commitment, we get the budget, and we try to get our first teams. Now, I understand and I fully agree. Once you have several teams that go back, and we, for example, when we ran these initial pilots in organizations, sometimes referred to the teams and then a ritual that they had as a Scrum Safari, because other teams would drop by, not as part of the sprint review, but on a regular day, they would see how this team was working. And just by entering their room, right, seeing all these sticky notes up there, seeing how the team communicates, they felt the very positive vibes. And then also seeing how much progress these teams are making, how their development capacity has grown. They're like, why aren't we doing that, right? So once you have the first team set up, I fully buy into what you mentioned earlier. It becomes easier and easier, and probably you won't have enough space and enough coaches to help the other teams, and you'll have a backlog or a queue of teams. But these very first teams, what have been good tactics for you to get them onboarded, to get them started?
I don't know the English phrase for Klinkenputzen. You have to
basically being a sales rep, right? You go from team to team and try to sell it to them.
You have to pitch it. It's almost a pitch, and a bit of luck in that pitching, or a bit of you have someone in the leadership board, in the board of the company, who says, I think this will be the first team, and he overrules the team decision. And then I, as the guy who teaches them, who is the coach, who is the change pilot, have to put them in the best way so that the second part you describe starts automatically. And we are doing a lot of speed dating. We do a speed dating day where we use our lab, our labor culture lab, for showing the cases we do in there. Every 20 minutes, another part, and the whole company can book in for that, like a safari. Book in, not on a normal day, but on a speed dating day for 4 sessions in the morning and 4 sessions in the afternoon, seeing what we do there that they won't hurt by looking at new work style, and getting in touch with it. And this is also a way to get the first team or the second team if you get the first team, and then it's sort of sales pitch and Klinkenputzen.
Yeah. Okay. So you try to sell it. Now you get the first teams. You mentioned that you have this labor culture workshop, but you also have a labor culture lab.
Yep.
Now, this lab, my interpretation, I haven't seen them, so I'm interpreting here, you correct me if I'm wrong, is a dedicated space for teams to explore in a 6-week period. That's what I've heard from you, right? New ways of working. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the investments that needs to be done early on is to provide this space or this labor culture lab. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Now, when a team goes into that lab, what kind of support do they get?
Yep. We're starting in the very first step. the lab should be a dedicated room in the middle of the corporate building, not in Berlin, not somewhere else, in the middle of the corporate building. I think today, post-pandemic, there's no problem to get a free space in
most companies.
because in most companies they try to reduce, but they can't switch off that fast the hiring contracts with the building owners and something like that. So there is a space. The space should be in the middle of the corporate building because all the others that are not in the lab can go through, see how they work, get the inspiration in these things. First point. Second point, and that's what I call the method bag. The method bag is the physical room. I did some points about the parts of the room, and the second part of the bag are the methods. They are taught by the change pilot. I call it change pilot. It's a guy, systemic coach, for example, systemic coach, something like an agile coach, or someone who's doing coaching as his profession or her profession, is with the team for 6 weeks. And he's with the team looking at them and see how they work together. And the team comes in for these 6 weeks with her computer, with her phone, but without photos of their marriage, photos of their cats. They are coming a bit of a naked, without any environment from their normal desk. Because in that lab, there is no dedicated desk. As I mentioned before, you have to change the workspace for every meeting because every meeting has its own environment that it needs. They're coming for this 6 weeks. They get a kickoff before they come. They get a scheduled time of this 6 weeks. They come with their computer, but they come with their daily business and do their daily business 6 weeks in our rooms, accompanied by a change pilot. A bit of additional time for method teaching and these things, yes, but they do their normal work because the normal work has to fit to the new works of working in the future. And we fit it to them, not, as I mentioned, not multi-purpose, only one purpose or one method for one purpose. So this is the part where they get a change pilot, being with them for the 6 weeks, looking after them, teaching them the methods, correcting, as you far more know than I, correcting as a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, the process of designing a backlog or doing the new tasks and these things. Not in a way of teaching from the top down, but teaching on eye level, on the same level, being at the end, being a better team with better methods for their daily business. And they come with their daily business and they do their daily business.
Yeah. Now, this helps me a lot to get a picture of that. I understand, right? They come into a completely new space. They leave everything behind other than whatever is essential for their work. They have a guide or a coach or a pilot, as you call them, that supports them in this 6 weeks journey. Now, after 6 weeks, they go back to their previous environment. They go back to a room that probably doesn't fit their work. What happens there?
We do a transition and a back transition workshop and being with the team for the upcoming time. Not around the day, but if they want to. And the funniest thing is that most of the leaders or team leads change their mind about their single room use or double room use. They say, okay, I'm off for meetings 75% of the day. The room is clearly free for that time. I switch to the open space, for example, or to a office of 4 or 6 people. And we have our own meeting room, not bookable for other teams. Mm-hmm. So they changed. They don't throw in the walls, but they change in their environment to the method they learned. Mm-hmm. And they know how their rooms are. And so we can check with them what's the right method, what's the right change of the rooms. So they have their own private, as I call it, private in parentheses, private meeting room, where you can do one-to-ones, where you can do a phone call, where you can do a conference call with 3 or 4 people, where you can do a little workshop, a creation session, a collaboration session. And on that open space part, or the bigger offices where 4 or 6 people in one room, they do their daily business when they check their emails, when they do a bit of concept work or discussing a point or something like that. So we do that transition, and the teams has the right to ask for more coaching in their spaces as much as they want to. As much as it fits for the change pilot, yes, but as much as they want to have that transition back and not to cut after this 6 weeks. There's no results afterwards if I cut after 6 weeks.
So what I get here is, you give them the autonomy to change their permanent room in a way that it fits their new way of work, right?
Yeah.
That's I think, but it's their choice. You don't force them.
Yeah.
You don't tell them what needs to be done. It is their choice. After experiencing this for 6 weeks, now they go back and say, hey, what kind of changes do we need to do? And that process is accompanied with that transition workshop. Yeah. And they have the chance to ask for more coaching. Now, during this 6 weeks, and the reason I'm asking is my philosophy with most of my clients has been the following. The intention is to build these capabilities internally so that it can scale within the organization. Mm-hmm. Because if you have, let's say, 1 or 2 of these change pilots, and each of them is supporting one team for 6 weeks in the, what do you call it, labor culture lab, they cannot go back with the other ones because they're already going to work with the next group that's queuing up. So every team that leaves the labor culture lab, that would be my experience or my preference, should have the capabilities, at least 1 or 2 people within that team, to coach themselves going forward. Is there also something that you emphasize on?
I emphasize on that, but we didn't implement a train the trainer program. This is more or less what you mean. Exactly. I call it a train the trainer program. I think by doing this 6 weeks, as I mentioned earlier, we have that part of developing a habit. And I work with that part of developing a habit. This team works with that skills and does not need in the future a lot of help from the change pilots. They need, after 6 weeks, a review for their methods or something like that. They don't need to be in a weekly or bi-weekly basis coaching more or less for 2 or 3 hours or something like that, because we work with that habit approach more or less. But putting the trainer also in is a thing that I write down after this podcast to implement it as well in the system as one of the methods we implement in the team. Yeah.
No, because I really think, right, if we think about changing an organization, and I mean what you are describing, starting out with one team, adding a second, adding a third, ultimately means you want to change the whole organization. And this
Absolutely.
change, from my experience, includes a lot of capability building, right? People development. And I think the labor culture lab that you mentioned, or that workshop, is a great way to build capabilities, both as a whole team. How do we collaborate on a day-to-day basis? And how do we continuously improve? But also on an individual level, where people, due to the extended collaboration, learn the skills of other people so that they can support each other much, much better. But also by observing this change pilot or that coach, or however we want to call this person, they can also learn a lot of those skills which are necessary as they go back, not only for the transition, but for continuously developing themselves as individuals, but more importantly as a group, and then also impacting the rest of the organization. I believe if you want to scale this, you mentioned yourself, like you get at some point, you have a queue of teams that want to get into this room, and you might run out of space.
Yep.
But I think more often you run out of people that are competent in being the change pilot. Is that correct, that assumption?
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing to add.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so we this is super interesting. I wish we would have had this conversation earlier, and I would have visited one of your labor culture labs. But maybe this is a topic.
But you can visit it. One is broken down because the Zurich insurance left the building, and this didn't exist because it is changed to flats, to living rooms. But the other you can visit if you want to. I will arrange that. No problem. It's in Essen, but you can. Yeah, I think we can do that.
We can do that. Okay, and maybe we can go there together, and you show me around.
Yeah.
So that would be really good. Now, the other method that you mentioned, and you mentioned it briefly. I wrote down a few notes because I wanted to get back to this. Is giving power to the right people, right? Or putting power in the right place. And that means for a lot of people losing power. And you talked about how in most German organizations, and I think it's the same in many other parts of the world, at least where I have been, people get promoted into leadership positions or managerial positions, right? Into positions of power based on expertise they have in a specific domain. We refer to these people as expert leaders. And I think there's nothing wrong with expert leaders. It's great if a leader has expertise, but it's not sufficient. You need more than that to succeed as a leader. There's this great book from Marshall Goldsmith, What Brought You Here Won't Take You There, which emphasizes on, hey, you need to continue building new skills, specifically leadership skills. Can you elaborate on this a bit more? Because for many organizations, the change in whom do we promote, based on what criteria do we promote, and how do we develop our leaders is a very big one, especially as the previous or the existing CEOs have gone through the previous ladder and are very familiar with that and not familiar with how it's going to look like in the future. So to some extent, they also feel threatened by these changes. And maybe you can share a bit how you have managed that in the past.
If I have managed that in the past that well, I'm not. I think a lot of companies or a lot of guys will be better than today. Also me and myself. I think I put myself always in the position that I'm being, I show by my own work how, I'm looking for the word in Germany. It's Vorbild. I don't know.
Role model.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. I put it to that role model thing and looking for leaders who can be the role model because they are not from the expert topic coming. They're coming from the leader position. To that. And if you develop them as a corporate influencer, it's always a buzzword. It's also a buzzword, but I think if we use that for putting him in front of that process as the role model, you have one face for that. This is one possibility to do that. I think I always do it by my own. For example, funny thing, if a new team members joins our team or my team, I always say, I don't look at holiday things. I don't look at what you order for your daily work, like paper, pencils, notebooks, or something like that. I always sign without looking at it, because you are old enough to know what you need for your work, and you are old enough to manage with the team that your holiday crosses with other holidays, and the work will still be done as we need it. So in most of the parts, I put all these signing process to the assistant. I don't look at them. And I always say, when you order a Bugatti, then I will say to the CEO, yeah, I know that, and I signed it. And afterwards, we have a problem, not with the CEO. And you don't have a problem with the CEO. That's my problem. But we have a discussion why you ordered a Bugatti for an insurance company or something like that. Yeah, as the picture for that, I do it on my own as I think the other leaders should do it for their. And this role model corporate influencer thing brings more pressure to the others, because the team, and this is the lab idea stands behind it, brings more pressure to the other team leads to change their line of guidance or empowerment or something like that. The second part is, I'm the innovation and future guy. I'm not the process guy. I'm not the guy who brings everything to the end. I'm absolutely fine with 80%, because 80% is not for a hard operation, not for a self-driving autonomous car, but for most of the things is 80% very fine, very, very good. And the last 20% costs us as much as the 80% has cost. So I work until this point because I think it's a good product. And if we need 88% or 92%, others have to do the fine design, the last part of it. Because I'm looking in the future. I'm the future guy. And I think if you be in your team very clear with that and show your team that they can do it in fulfilling the KPIs, discussing about targets, not about process, they find the best way to do it. This is my own experience, and I'll show it via that role model, corporate influencer thing to the others. But it's a hard way. It's a hard way of the CEOs who go through that for 10, 20, 30, 40 years or something like that. But I think if you have one of these role models, the company or parts of the company can change. And then you have that wave idea of more following that. Yeah. And to that topic you had in the earlier discussion, getting the first team. I always look at the guys who have the same spirit as I, or get fixed on, or get very touchy to that point. There are post-its. They are a lot of fun. And if you see that guys and pick them out and say, okay, let us work on that point. Let us work on your fun you had while you were in the lab and just looking around. Then you get the second team, the third team. And in the same way, you get the leader losing its own power by pushing the power to the expert guy.
Yeah. I was thinking exactly the same when you were talking about this, right? With the leaders, it's the same thing. Getting the first 2, 3, 4 people is difficult. But once they're hooked, once they get going, once their teams deliver better results, I mean, ultimately, every person in a leadership position wants to deliver results, right? That's what brought them there. That's what their motivation is. Many of them are very competitive. Then they're like, oh man, how can I get there? Yeah. And once they start asking that question, you have an opening. You can get in, you can show them, you can try to work with them. And many of them are actually, when they see that the methods are working, many of them, that's my experience at least, are very coachable. Some are not, but they probably don't have a future in those organizations that want to develop themselves. But those that are coachable, I think this is a great environment. So one other thought that came to me is, you talked earlier about that one of the most important things is getting leadership alignment and commitment. And it's not only commitment to the change initiative per se, it's also a commitment to changing yourself.
Yep.
Because that change ultimately will translate into the organization changing. So, Marc, looking at the time, we're at the end of our time box. Much faster than I thought.
Yeah, much faster than I thought. I looked for 5 minutes ago to that clock and I see, oh my gosh. 53 minutes. Where are they?
Where are they? It was such a pleasure hosting you. I'm sure there will be more conversations between you and I. I will take you up on that promise to get a look at one of these labor culture labs. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was a great pleasure to me.